The other change that I think would be adapted, and you'll see this in the implementation manual that Donna's going to introduce, and if you've read it before listening in today, is our weight loss targets for the program we changed to a range of 5 to 10% from the 7% weight loss. And these are program outcome goals. The reason for that is we wanted to better match the Canadian Diabetes Canada's prevention guidelines, which states around 5 to 10% of body weight loss to help prevent diabetes. I think it's worth noting at this point that the weight loss target for this program is an outcome goal for the program. And some sites communicated weight loss goals to participants, while others decided not to communicate these participants and focus more on the healthy lifestyle choices as an outcome. And I'm going to be discussing this in the next few slides in a bit more detail. I'm sure some of you have some questions about that, and I hope to kind of clarify it. So one of the biggest adaptations, I would say, that overall was seen across pilot sites, and I don't even know if I want to call it adaptation because it wasn't taking away or changing any of the content, but it was really changing the focus of some of the messages that come across in the GLB to meet newer focuses with nutrition recommendations across the province that we're following. So some background onto why we're talking about this today. So as you've learned from everyone that's presented, the outcomes seen in the DPP study showed that modest weight loss through a healthy lifestyle, regular physical activity, 150 minutes, and a healthy diet resulted in significant reduction in diabetes risk in those living with prediabetes. And this was seen both short-term and long-term when we look at the longer-term outcome studies. This original DPP program focused on changing participants' energy balance through healthy eating and physical activity to reach weight loss. And at the time of this study, calorie counting and reducing total fat intake were the powerhouses of building healthy lifestyle for chronic disease prevention. However, in Ontario, what we're finding is the tone of this is really changing. And today in nutrition research, we're seeing indications that calorie counting and reducing fat may not be the only way to achieve healthy goals for chronic disease prevention. And so some of the reasons that we're taking and pulling out the other focuses of this program that help build skills around changing your energy intake and making those the focus rather than weight loss as the focus would be outlined on this slide. I'm going to talk a bit about each of them. So I'm sure most people are familiar with, and if not, I'm sorry, the Health at Every Size movement, looking at health outcomes and having people who don't necessarily have a healthy BMI but are still healthy, people achieving health outcomes without losing weight. There's newer research in this area, and there is a big shift from how do we change our language from talking about weight loss to changing to a healthy lifestyle and changing our behaviors rather than focusing on weight loss, and that does make a significant change. We see amongst dietitians and other healthcare professionals an increased awareness and possible increased rates of eating disorders, definite increasing numbers of disordered eating, and newer disordered eating patterns such as orthorexia becoming more of a concern, and looking at can we do no harm as an issue, and do diets and calorie counting trigger some of these for people and become more of an issue. So how do we address this area? And there's also been a big focus in terms of nutrition research from nutrient focus to changing nutrient-specific focus changes to changing overall diet patterns to manage chronic disease. So for the example with cardiovascular disease, instead of looking at reducing fat intake, changing the message to can you follow the Mediterranean diet or DASH diet or any of those well-studied diets in terms of managing heart disease risk. I think, too, from another perspective, we're starting to see an increased focus and change on environmental changes to support healthy lifestyle changes. So things like, changing transportation methods. So we're creating bike lanes to make physical activity more accessible from like an upstream sort of perspective. And I think one of the great things about the GLB program is it includes environmental changes from an individual perspective, looking at your environment and scanning it and how do you change it. So when looking at changing our focus, we aren't necessarily cutting out this program, but we're pulling out all of these things that the GLB had in it prior to, all this newer research coming out and being the forefront of all this programming. They already had it all in there, so we're just making that more of the stronger focus when we present this material. And how did sites across Ontario start to include more of this? So the first one to discuss there is that each site did this in a different way. So I'm just going to go through a few of these highlights to give you an idea how these messages were adapted within the program. And during training in Ontario, the master trainers definitely highlight a lot of this detail to ensure that newer lifestyle coaches feel confident in teaching all the content, specifically the nutrition content, in this way. And trainers also, I as a trainer always encourage that dietitians